president were forged signatures. Maybe you remember some of the
Worship and the body policy should not participate in partisan politics.
Pakateka n'abakwata Injito, its preoccupation now is to give a good service to the people of Zambia.
For us, we only ride on the facts. Respect the decision of the party. Whoever they are going to choose, but seeking our numbers can go and show.
You were once members of the party. Yes. So it's easier for you to come back.
Aya marali enango baota abantu kukwera kusokolo, but UPP is trying to show a difference.
The issue I'll never rest until we see justice served.
Munomotwaikala Julius, munokusekelela unyemba waji tuachula sana ama voting yaisa baisa ba MP bafukama bakunkula tukosele bikotereni ifo tukakusha ifro tuleba botera tolale tata declare tinaba wina batisitachila.
It's a motion that attempts to destabilize the governance of this country, if at all, by whatever.
Every Wednesday on Liberation TV, and this is the news and current affairs program. We'll get to discuss issues affecting the nation, and we are live on Go TV channel 96, on Dogstar 458, on Movie TV Decoder channel 443, also on our Facebook page Liberation TV Zambia, and you can send your messages to 0978 43 74 37 or 978 43 74 37. My topic this evening is banning of political regalia state function. Banning of political regalia at state function. And my guest is a People's Party President, Honorable Mike Mlongoti, and I'm your host, Lovely Kayomo. Mr. President, welcome to Liberation TV once again.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers.
Okay. Before we go into our main topic for discussion this evening, 2018 is almost ending. We want to get your overview of how this year has been in terms of politics, also the economy of this country.
Well, thank you for this invitation. I would like to, first of all, before I forget, we are moving towards Christmas, the celebration of the birth of the Lord Jesus Christ. I want to wish all the viewers happy and Merry Christmas if you don't ever come back here again. However, it's been an eventful year. We have seen the deterioration of the economy, the continuation of violence in the political arena, and just the general hopelessness in the management of the republic. So, I don't know if there's anything to celebrate. We saw prayers on the 18th of October, and those of us who said, well, we were not very keen for reasons that we did not see sincerity in the people who were gathering to pray, some of them. And what's the day today? Today is the 21st. Where are the rains? We were praying for God's blessings, and the rains aren't here. What does this indicate? That we challenge for the future in terms of food security. What is frightening is that all the food, most of the maize we had, we exported to our neighbors. So our neighbors have got food, with very little food here. In fact, even the harvest this year, it's sad that they've not done a lot of purchasing. If you go to storage sheds around the country, most of them are empty. That's a sad indication. Our concern must be food security for ourselves first, and then our neighbors next. So it's been quite an inventive year. It's been quite a challenging year, and nobody's telling us what they're preparing for us for the next year. They are silent. We challenge them to come and debate with us so that they can tell the public what plans they have for all of us. They are mute. It's an indication that they have nothing to tell us. It must be more frightening, because we expect our leaders to be available to us, to tell us, don't be stressed. We are doing this, we are doing this, we are doing this. This year you've seen they're not talking about fertilizer, they are not talking about seed, they are quiet. They are not telling us about the plans they have to import maize, because for sure we'll be forced to import maize to feed ourselves.
Then coming back to the issue at hand, this issue of cannibalism in this country. You've been in politics for quite a number of years. Maybe can you give the viewers the trends from the time of the UNIP government, the time that MMD formed government you were part of at that time, and also up to where we are now under the current PF regime?
The Kada mentality came with the UNIP to start with. They made everybody a member of UNIP. And in the process, the authority that was there traditionally, from the chiefs, the village what they did, was supplanted and imposed with cadres. Now you know cadres being party functionaries, they got instructions from party structures. And in the process, confusion came. Now there was a fight between traditional leadership and the party authorities. Now because the party cadres were drawing authority from the state, they suppressed the traditional authority. And in the process, they harassed citizens. And one of the reasons why there was a bitterness and the removal of UNIP was because the vigilantes, whatever they call them, became so vicious. And that people said, enough of this, let's get rid of them. Come MMD. Members of MMD, some of them took it as an opportunity for them to use their party positions to advantage themselves on facilities, on employment, and everything else. But one interesting thing that developed is when the late Dr. Mwanawasa came, he says, don't escort me to the airport, don't receive me at the airport, I don't need you. I have sufficient people to receive me and send me off, because as you come, you become a nuisance. You're fighting amongst yourselves, you're looking for money all the time. He says, I don't want this. He managed to control it. And even in the markets and bus stops, the instructions were very clear. Go to bus stop, misbehave. Go to market, misbehave. You're on your own. The law will visit you. I think that's the kind of leadership we've been looking for, where all of our citizens must know that nobody is below the law, nobody is above the law. We must all be within the law. And if we do that, we respect each other, because we'll be guided by the laws of the country. Come our friends, the PF. To make matters worse for them, they have no party cards. Whenever they wake up and say, I'm PF, and they go to bus stops, they go to markets, and terrorize people. They're still doing it now. Now you see, that's not right. The Local Government Act gives power to councillors and all those to take control. Nobody gives cadres power to go to bus stops and markets. No, those are illegal activities. I hope one day I'll have an opportunity to go back in government. We shall put that nonsense to an end. If people want to do business, let them organize themselves in a decent way. Not harassing people who come to board buses, direct them to buses they don't want to board. Insisting, you must go in this bus. In the meantime, you look at the bus they're insisting you must board, it's a finished wreck. You find wires on the seats, and they pack you like sardines. I think that's not right. We do hope that we can change that mindset where pastors must be controlled by councils. Money which is supposed to go to local authorities end up in the pockets of cadres. The cadres have more money than the councils. In the process, provision of social services is a disaster. Look, a research was done over Lusaka City Council, which revealed that no company in Lusaka is bigger than Lusaka City Council. So the biggest revenue institution is Lusaka City Council. But where does that money go? You see now, for lack of planning and for lack of maybe just disregard of lack of sensitivity, the young men and women who are trying to survive by selling things in the streets are being chased like foreigners or thieves. That is dangerous. We've been unable to, we failed them, I can tell you, we failed them to give them jobs or career opportunities and what have you. For how long are we going to chase them? For how long are they going to run? One day they'll stop running. And when they stop running, it is us who will be running. We've seen this happen before. And some people are so insensitive that they think that this can't happen. If you recall how the Arab Spring came in Tunisia, one guy called Bouaziz, he was tired of being harassed. He bent himself. That's how riots started in Tunisia. And the Arab Spring started. So, we don't seem to learn from this. I see young men running. They're being chased by council police, grabbing the items with no receipts given. Now that's a little capital that those young people have got. And they keep losing every day. Now in their decency, they've obeyed the laws. Like I say, one day they'll refuse to run. And when they refuse to run, we must be ready to run ourselves.
Yeah, I was attending a workshop yesterday organized by SACOT. It was a public forum and brought here near Lusaka. And we had Dr. Neo Simutani and Dr. Houston Chiputa, part of the panelists there. And the main issue was the issue of cannibalism that we are discussing this evening. And they said we need to have a president who is not, politically inclined. After the elections that are done and people have voted, we need to have a president who embraces all the citizens, regardless whether they voted for him or not. And the issue of transporting cadres to the airport, like you mentioned there, like Dr. Manasa did at some point, must stop that they are trained. And we see people being inconvenienced as they head towards the airport. Now, two things here. What would be adverse to the PF government in terms of trying to stop this issue of cadres trooping to the airport to save the president or to escort him whenever he's going out within or outside the country. And also the issue of having a president who is politically neutral after the elections are done, head of state who embrace whether it's UPND, People's Party, FTD, but someone who is neutral and able to embrace all the citizens in the country. Because we see when the president is living, is the victim of the party symbol, meaning that only those that are part of their ruling party, are people that should benefit from whatever is available in the country. So two issues here: advice to the PF government in terms of telling their cadres from trooping to the airport where the president is living or is coming in the country, and also having a head of state who will be neutral regardless of who voted for him in the last election.
Well, let me start by saying that we've always shortchanged ourselves in the selection of leaders. You will pick people you don't even know where they're coming from. In this era today, in the 21st century, what we expect is that if you want to offer yourself for public service, you must have the necessary qualifications, experience, a temperament, and a concept of what you want to achieve. Most of these walk into those offices with no concept at all. So in the process, because in cadres there is this worship, they enjoy that. And even those who can't sit in the office and read papers and write letters are more comfortable in the streets, because in the streets there's no order. An intellectual technocrat would want to spend time in the office to do a number of things, to read, to think, to plan, and to ask those deep questions that require attention. So you see most of these who don't have that grounding, they are too happy in the streets, not in the offices. Now because of that, you have a problem where those cadres now become the anchor. If they don't like you, they will set cadres on you. If you oppose to their, sometimes the policies that are unbelievable, they set cadres on you. If you want to do business in the market, they want to see your loyalty to the party. The markets don't belong to the parties, they belong to the people of Zambia. Now, this has been allowed to grow, where they were even tempted to be the president's people. These are my people by the president. In the process, all those from the villages, from whatever, moved into Saka because they were tolerated and whatever. I'm not saying that it's wrong to control them. I can see there was an attempt some time back. They built some little structures where people could cook Ushima, whatever. The structures go around Osaka. They were there. What has happened? They were ignored, they deteriorated. In the process, people did not cook on the structures, they cooked on the floor. Now, once you allow such a thing, it becomes difficult for you in future to say you can't cook here. And more so that most of our people cannot eat from restaurants. Those are very handy for them. They give them breakfast, they give them lunch, some of them even dinner. All we need to do is organize them properly so that one hygiene standards we are talking about are there, and also support them financially so that they can put up structures that are hygienic, that are safe, and of course it's comfortable for people who need them. Now, when the president encourages cadres to be around him all the time, no, it's not right. There must be time for cadres. When the president is going to address them, he must spend time meeting citizens, because in politics, not everybody will vote for you. Not everybody belongs to a political party. They don't have to, because the Constitution provides them freedoms. And if you expect them to be worshipping all of them, you are cheating yourself. Thirdly, look at the quality of presidents and their orientation. Some of them come from good backgrounds, others from bad backgrounds. And in the process, even in the association, it's a cloning process. You know, you can't clone a goat out of a sheep. So you see, if you got a sheep, it will clone another sheep. And the conduct of the person who came from the market, for instance, came from what? It follows naturally that they can't forget some of the habits and whatever. So it's a sad thing that you find that the president, he cascades more towards the party officials. No, the minute you become a Republican president, there's no way you can be partisan. I heard the President Lungu a week ago say that it's difficult for him to deliver development in some areas because he doesn't have a no-purpose vehicle. I answered him back, I said, no, government is a no-purpose vehicle. That's why they found it every part of Zambia. So you can't claim that you have no all-purpose vehicle, you can't take development there. When budgets are made, they are made for Zambia. When councils are created, they are created for Zambia. When MPs are elected, they are elected for Zambia. When councils are elected, they are elected for Zambia. So when you start saying, I can't deliver development there, what are you saying? Because the budgeting system is supposed to be a portfolio now. Means of health, means of education. It means it's covering everybody. But you see, this kind of attitude, where you think only people who sing for you, throw stones for you, are the ones who must benefit, it's immoral. What we expect every leader to accept is that their purpose is to maximize the happiness of all the citizens, irrespective of who they are, whether they are politically active, whether they don't like politics like Jehovah's Witnesses. Your role is to maximize their happiness. And that's what you are there for. So the all-purpose vehicle created for you is the government of the Republic of Zambia, the civil service.
Okay. Now come back to the issue of the party regalia during state functions. We've seen a number of clashes between the PF and the UPND during, for example, the Youth Day, where even a young woman was stripped naked at some point. Now, are you of the view that there is a need to ban, the issue of party regalia during state functions?
In any case, imagine what happiness it will bring to the minds of those people who are not politically active, that they can go to functions and be accepted as citizens. When you give them those party regalia, what are you saying? You're sending a wrong message. To your party functions, let them wear that regalia. To state functions, they must all go dressed the way they like. So the minute you discriminate by your uniforms, you're inciting the differentiation. And some of those who wear those uniforms, they haven't been fine in school. Some of them, in terms of orientation, they're very, very, very weak. They think by wearing that uniform they've got power. And more so if they're in the ruling party. That must be taken away. I would hope that people must differentiate between state functions and party functions. If they're all gathering, they can wear the way they like. But when it's a state function, those uniforms must stay away. You find it in the state funerals, they call it uniforms. What for? Are you going to mourn as a party gatherer? Or you're going to mourn the person because you are emotionally involved at the loss of a life? So, we do hope that one day when we're going to put him to go back into government, which I think is going to come, we shall look at all these things and say, what has gone well, what hasn't gone well. The tragedy of our circumstances is that they hate history. They don't want to revisit history. They don't want to be informed by the past. They want to reinvent the wheel. And they hate to be guided. They hate to learn from those who've been there. So in the process, they delay the development process, and they also cause discord. Because you won't go and start something which if the technocrats have been working on for years, suddenly you come and say, I'm the new minister. We must do it this way. We have in government what you call a cabinet handbook, which defines each portfolio, the responsibilities for the minister, whatever. Some of our colleagues, I don't know whether they've ever read the cabinet portfolio handbook. You find them saying things that you say, this is Zambia. Some of their conduct is outlandish. And I think in future, the people of Zambia must ask themselves, what are we looking for? We're looking for leaders, or we're looking for looters? Because they concentrate more on looting than providing leadership. We should change ourselves. They come to say, this is the one we want. When you ask them, do you know this person? They can't explain. What's the background of this person? They don't know. But it's this one. Because they drink together, they eat together. In mature democracies, even to be a counselor, they've got to interrogate you. They must question your background. Where did you grow up? Who are your parents? Who are your family members? What history do you carry? When you were young, how was your conduct? Were you a decent person or you were just a good? These things are necessary because they should inform all of us about the quality of leaders that we have. But now you can see when you challenge them, they will be cheated with grade 12. When time comes to complete nomination forms, oh no, there's disaster. Now, how did they qualify in the first place? We must attach a premium to leadership so that all those who come into leadership can account for their past. Imagine in this era, you have a minister who is intended at college, is intended at university. I know the sharp guys from the 7th, but let me tell you, you reach a level where you become incompetent because technology has changed, and those of us who were born before computer, we are challenged by technology. With the miracle of technology, you just have to equip yourself. It doesn't matter where. Look, for instance, I heard them electing an MP from the recent election, a man who can write. Sure, first of all, you are being cruel. In Parliament, there's no local language there. In Parliament, there's a lot of literature to read, and for you to stand up and begin to speak for your people in there, in English, but you don't know how to speak English. And they said, this is the man. Or what were they saying? At least Jesus was in the boat to elect an ignorant man. I'm sorry to say this. It's not me who said the official language must be English, and that you must have been taught. But if you have to interrogate most of these leaders we've got, they have certificates that, my God, no, let's move away from that. We must have what you call positive discrimination, where we say we're looking for grade 12, it must be 12. Where they're looking for an engineer, it must be an engineer. You can't go there, you're not an engineer. They were advertised for an engineer. You'll be discriminated positively. And that's what we must also do. Look at our councils. Why are they a disaster? Sharing plots the order of the day. Money for markets. Money for bus stops. That's a preoccupation. I live in an area in Lusaka West. I don't know when I last saw my councillor. What are they there for? Do they know why they're there? What's the concept of leadership that they have? We must continue to interrogate these issues because we'll continue to shortchange ourselves. If you elect a friend as secretary who can't write, what are you expecting from that person? Is that person who is unfair to himself? It's you who is voting for him. You are more than unfair to that person. All of us have got ambition, but it must be ambition that is healthy, which can help you to perform in the position.
Okay, that brings the issue of voting patterns in this country. People attach personalities instead of ideas, and find that, for example, PF is Edgar Lungu, UPND is HH, FDD is Edith Nawakwi, People's Party is Mike Mongoti, and there's that excitement. For example, in the last election, there was a Fintini room. People did not take time to, interrogate, like you said, to interrogate to see who are we voting for. And after the elections are done, people now start to reflect and see maybe what is going on. So what would be advice to the Zambian people in terms of interrogating new leaders when you aspire for office to see your backgrounds and also what you are bringing to the table, instead of just having that excitement to say and they attach your face to your political party and not what you are offering to the table.
Some of these issues are evolutionary. They are not revolutionary. With time, things will change. Our children don't ask each other about tribe. They don't even know. They're just Jack, you're Jane. That is a good development, because after all, we are all human beings. We've got to overcome that part of our time when you identified by your tribe. Now look, the new tribes that have been made are tribes of engineers, tribes of accountants, tribes of lawyers. Those are the new tribes that have been made. So if you remain in the old tribe of being a Lamba, Rosie, you are remaining behind. Your children, would they go to America when they ask that, who are you? Oh, I'm a ranger. To begin to say, what's that? But if there's someone accountant, you'll find other tribesmates, accountants in America. I'm a lawyer, you'll find other lawyers in America, because it's a global world now where we are all one. So, in as much as we would want to complain about the voting patterns, let us accept that the tendency is to go back into our cocoons. Oh, I came from Serenge, I'm going to stand in Serenge. I came from Mansa, I'm going to stand in Mansa. Why are you going there? The main reason is that you are more comfortable with amongst people you think are your own. But that's what it shouldn't be. We are hoping that, like I've said, it's not revolutionary, it's evolutionary. Along the way, this will begin to disappear. You'll find when you meet high, poor, high, whatever. Very rare these days, meet a person and say, where do you come from? When you reach that conversation, you've gone too deep. And the normal circumstance, hi, who are you? What do you do? What have you studied? Where do you live? By the time you reach the village, it's morning. So we do hope that along the way, with the interactions, with the mixing, because especially with intermarriages. Today, if you insist on marrying your tribe's person, tough luck. Search out, because maybe the best is elsewhere. And through hybrid, we are getting very wonderful, intelligent children. So we should not confine ourselves to our tribal groups. So even the voting patterns, in the interim, yes, no matter what we say, Mr. Kayombo will go to his village and stand there. Even when he goes to Mandevo, you look for his tribesmates. They identify each other very quickly. But that's not what we are looking forward to. We're looking forward to the new tribes of teachers, of nurses, of doctors. That's a new tribe. New tribes that take a make.
Okay. In your preamble, you did mention the issue of political violence. How do you rate the performance of the police in terms of trying to curb political violence, not just during elections, but even after?
Two things will happen. In the past, when they were doing recruitment, whether it's the Army, Air Force, Police, they were sensitive to who they are recruiting. Where do you come from? So that you can balance up. Today, they are recruited on account of being a party member. Now, that's a disaster. We do hope that in future, we shall reduce that issue so that with a police which is balanced, with an army, Air Force, national service, which are balanced, where you can identify yourself with national service, Air Force, army, etc. But our current situation is so bad that the PF cadres in uniform, the UPND cadres in uniform, you know, when you give instructions to a PF cadre to arrest a PF cadre, they are reluctant. The instruction to UPND to arrest a UPND, they are reluctant. You shouldn't have that in a law enforcer. What you expect, a law enforcer must enforce the law irrespective of who is involved. But it looks like the powers that be have encouraged that, the powers that be have enjoyed that, because the party cadres who are in the police are being used very well in harassing opponents. These things are short-term. You must always remember that the day they vacate the seat, another person will take over differently. What will happen? We don't want that future. We want a future where all of us must be protected by the law, and the law enforcers must be there for us. I should not fear you as a police officer because you come from another tribe. I should respect you on the basis that you're a law enforcer. You go to America, the police officer is heavily armed. Heavily armed. Why? They say to protect your freedoms, not to protect your tribe. But you've seen instances in America where a black person is shot by a white police. All these things are unnecessary. We must go towards a humanity where we are all one, and we must value on the basis of your character, on the basis of your color. And I think the future will determine this. Our children, like I'm saying, are becoming more free with each other. They don't care about your color. Some of us are still carrying a hangover, this is a Mzungu, this is a, you understand? That will die along the way. For now, we've got to live with it, try as much as possible to see if we can bring it down.
Okay. Now, Dr. Sultan said that maybe there's a change in the manner that the IG is appointed. Maybe we might see a change in how the police operate. Do you share the same sentiments?
The IG, the current IG, I knew him before. He was a wonderful person. And I don't know what happens when they get into jobs. He's got to pander to the whims of the appointing authorities. I think in America, the police chiefs are elected by the citizens. By election, they choose their own whatever. Here, the law is for appointing authority. Now, because of that, it will take a long time. I think we must move towards an era where the people must vote for their own police chief. Then the loyalty of that police chief is to the people who elected him. So, I do not think that the issue of violence is not deliberate. It is deliberate because you cause fear in the minds of people, especially if you are not performing as a government. You look for an opportunity to suppress citizens who question your non-performance. And also when you develop avarice, excessive greed, illicit accumulation, where you take public property like yours, and when the owners of properties question you, you take the police to arrest them, to intimidate them, or you charge them with treason. You know, sometimes I laugh. I went into law school to understand laws. And when I hear somebody say, oh, I'll charge you with treason, I shiver. They understand that felony consequence. They play with words in such a careless manner. When we quarrel, let's just quarrel. When we differ, let's differ. If you go to advise me, advise me. Don't threaten me. Don't begin to invoke laws that are punitive in other citizens. Because you are creating bitterness. And when you do that, where do you find the friendships, relationships? They appear when leadership show one humility, they also show empathy, and that they are willing to be criticized. They can bend backwards. See, if you can't bend backwards, how do you expect other people to bend backwards? We expect all of us to have humility and accept that no one is perfect. When I went to Outward Bound School many years ago, when you go to Kapili on the bus, different soldiers on the bus went to Outward Bound School in Mbala. There were big people, there were whatever, tough, whatever. The director on the bus said, but the others were trying to look like they were too powerful. He stopped the driver, stopped the driver. The driver stopped, he wanted to address all of us. What he said, he turned to me because I was a very small young person. He says, Mike, don't worry about all those here who think that God's gift to mankind. You shall see when you are climbing the hills, when you are going in the water, those who are God's gift to mankind. And for sure, when you go to Mbala, you could see people on a rope, they are crying, calling his children and wife and whatever, scared of dying. And the captain said, the director said, remember what I told you? Those who thought they were God's gift to mankind, there they are. We are all human. We share same weaknesses. We share same competences at times because we go to same colleges. We share sometimes because of environment. You are Christian. You bring to the table Christian values. And you come from a family where there was never peace. So peace, you don't know peace. You come to learn about peace outside that environment. So we've got to help you break in so that you acknowledge that, what you saw your parents doing should not be the norm. The norm is there must be no violence in the families.
Okay. Now coming back to the issue of, like you said, those that try to question government decisions, either threatened or arrested. Now, the PF and the RRs have accused the opposition in this country of not having a clear manifesto, but only a smear campaign trying to blame the image of the country and that of the President Edgar Lungu. And then also that you have ignored all the positive things that they are doing in this country and just focused on the negativities, the corruption, crusade, which, as they said, just aimed at getting political mileage for you in your opposition to unseat the PF government and then take over power. So if you have a clear manifesto that has issues that can push on the needs of the Gambian people, and are you being unfair in the way that you're offering checks and balances to the current PF government?
Okay. Let me start by saying PF, they hate democracy. They are the only political party I've seen who carry coffins for each other. They were taking coffins of Mr. Lubinga all over, Mr. Kavimba, coffins. If that's what democracy is all about for them, for us that's not democracy. It's a mark of intolerance. Secondly, when they were in the opposition, the late Mr. Michael Tukiasata, may soul rest in peace. My God, was such a vocal critic that he was no respect of persons. He called the late Mr. Manaosa names. Garbage. What? In Parliament, I would stand up and tell them that, we are democratic as MMD. We would want another political party one day to take over. That's what democracy is all about. But I would say, as a rider, not these people I'm seeing here from the PF. My fears, my prediction has come true. How many of these PF leaders have you hosted here with me? I've been coming here, been inviting me on many occasions. Have they ever come? Intellectual discourse is the only way you can send a message to the people. Now, they were criticizing when they were outside, some of them very carelessly in their broken English. Now they are receiving energy. They say we should not tell them that you're not doing things well. When they steal, when they become corrupt, they are talking about corruption when they're outside. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. So the question of them expecting us to sit as, oh, what a performer, PF, oh, fantastic development. Does that make sense? Our role is not to praise them. Our role is to tell them when they haven't done well. Their role is to come here and tell the people that Mr. Mulungoti was saying this, but to come here to rebut what he said. I remember Mr. Antonio Mwanza, when he was appointed to go and eat with them, said, oh, we are going to be a lethal team now. And we will be a lethal team. Where are they today, the lethal team? The reality is turned on them. But you see, when people expect you to give them water, give them water. When people want cheap oil, give them cheap oil. It's not your sweet language. It's not your, especially the way they abuse some of the political leaders in the opposition by some of those spokespeople for fear. It's unbelievable that in modern era, where instead of intellectual discourse with temperate language, where people can see that there's something in that head. When we were young, it's called medulla oblongata or something like that. When you've got nothing, the tendency is to get angry, even to threaten to kill people. I tell you, I've been a keen debater all my life, and I enjoy people can come and they will debate. I have debated with everybody, starting from Mr. Guy Scott when he was the vice president. None of them have taken them on. Look, and they have taken them on. Why do I see in others? No. Anger. Use police. Threaten. If you're lucky, even beating up. Or, if you're even more unfortunate, they will make a coffin for you.
Now, the issue of misinformation, I think it will be two-sided of the story. There's been a lot of talk regarding the sale of to companies, and things have gone, has been sold, and the government comes in to say, no, these things are still intact. Where do you think government is going on in terms of giving the correct information to the public to avoid such aspirations? Then, is the media and Zambia doing enough also to sensitize the people, to tell them correct information, or they are part of trying to fuel tension in this country through the kind of reporting that is going on?
They've been overwhelmed by the miracle of technology. Social media has come and is here to stay. And unfortunately for them, they think they are secrets. In the past, if you carry the camera in town, they'll arrest you as a spy or something. That is gone. Your phone is a camera. So, they've been overwhelmed by that. They think they can keep what they call secrets in offices. What? Photo shots? I tell you, so overwhelmed by that. And no matter what they do to threaten to crash Facebook and what have you, no, it can't work because the platforms keep shifting. And you, the young people, you're so versatile that you're able to move from one platform to another. So, what's good for them is to come out and inform the people quickly. We intend to sell this, we intend to do this. Because if they don't, we'll get that information very early. And when we talk about it, they say it's a lie. Under pressure, they acknowledge in the end that what social media brought was correct. This is why I'm saying that, look, you must have competencies, you must have qualifications, so that you can keep abreast with the miracle of technology. I do not think you can wait for letters to arrive from somewhere handwritten. Now, information flow, you open that phone, WhatsApp, coming like that. And this is the era we're in. So if you don't tell the people yourselves, they will inform themselves. And there's nothing you can do about it. No matter what you threaten, it will not help you. So my advice to the people, inform the people. They're your employers. They're the owners of all these assets. But you seem to think that you own anything. You own nothing. The people of Zambia own everything. So when you're doing anything about the assets, they've got interest, they're keen to know. And when they ask you, you even become angry. You even issue contradicting statements. For the PF, you hear it from a party cadre, you hear it from the minister, goes back to a party cadre. By the time the minister is acknowledging finally, you got several statements that are contradictory. Why they created the office of Chief Government Spokesperson was to harmonize statements. If something we talked about from agriculture, they pass it on to Chief Government Spokesperson to say, we want to do this and this on fertilizer, blah, blah, blah. There's harmony. In the PF, you hear Patakada announcing a policy statement, make a policy statement. By the time the person in the office is responding, the cadre has even issued 5 statements on the policy issue. And when you ask them, from what position are you speaking? We are the party in government. Surely, the government of the Republic of Zambia, the administration, once they are elected, the party functionaries fall off. It is those who are appointed under the Constitution, those who are appointed in the civil service, who take over. But there's no division in the PF. Oh, police matters are being articulated by a person who has never entered a government office as a minister, as a permanent secretary. Now, surely, that is an insult to the people of Zambia. We're making an appeal. Put your house in order. We expect you to show us that you're competent, that you know what you're talking about. Don't allow party cadres to talk about police matters. Police matters for government and for ministers. Police matters for the party or for the cadres. But in the PF, everything goes. Party spokesperson such and such is talking about delivery of fertilizer. And when the question is, We are the party in government. Why did we remove UNIP? We removed UNIP because we said this issue of pig party in government frustrated us and stressed us. We said there must be separation between the party and the government. Now, if you've read the manifesto of the PF, they've got in there organs of the state will be answerable to organs of the party. What we threw out many years ago. And that's why you see party cadres more powerful than cabinet ministers. When I was a minister, I didn't allow a party cadre to speak for me on policy issues. When I made a decision as a minister, I announced that decision because that was my portfolio. In our friends, some ministers, I don't even know whether they're still there or they've evaporated. You never hear them. You allow cadres to speak for them and they're quiet. What are you there for then? If you've got no capacity, get out so that people capacity can take over.
Okay, the one part is not touched. Is the media doing enough, to give accurate information to the public, or they are part of, people are misinforming the public?
Well, the media by nature, one, they're guided by editorial policies. Times of Zambia, the email, the news, and what they are public, whatever. Normally, they depend on instructions that come from the powers that be. Private newspapers, editorial policy, they give instructions. Some are so negative, it doesn't matter what I say, they'll twist it and what have you. But I think it's a learning process for all of us. When they were closing the post, I said, what you've done, you created a new platform for new newspapers to emerge. This post you have closed, okay, they could have taxes, but the new ones who will come will have no taxes. What can you do? They will go for you even more viciously. And I'm sure you've seen the new newspapers that have emerged. They've got the policies that are so liberal. Some of them, I'm sure, if the PF were their way, they would close them down. But they have the power to do that now. If they did that, what would they benefit? The best thing is for them to invest them. Media is an informer. Like a computer, rubbish in, rubbish out. So if I issue a statement which is rubbish, who do I expect to polish it up for me? They're supposed to quote what I've said. And it's the quality of the giver of information sometimes that's letting us down. And there is a way to blame the journalist. In the course of my public service, you've never heard me say, I didn't say that. Whether you misquote me, I will let it pass. Because what's headline today is not headline tomorrow. Others you find, no, he misquoted me. What? I never do that. For what? I will go with you if you misquoted me. But when we meet, you say, that issue. I'll say to you, yes, I remember. It didn't go well. But let's move on. I think that's the attitude. We must help the media to feel comfortable. We must give education to the media, professional standards, whatever. I'll tell you, you've got very, very articulate and brave young people. When we were handing over the chairmanship of SADC in South Africa, as means of information, I was handing over the chair of information to SADC, to South Africa. It was my time to speak. I said, these young boys, very improperly dressed most of the time. The girls, of course, it's just very well, but the boys, you find them casual, they are what and what. I said, they're so powerful that ask President Mugabe here. There was one time when he wrote the slips to try and beat up a journalist. They are very powerful with those pens. If we develop them well, we nurture them well, give them support, we hear a lot. But they were informers. we must encourage them, we should not scare them. And I'm happy that there's a cadre of journalists that is developed in Zambia, carrying their professional ethics, integrity, and courage. They are doing a fantastic job.
Okay. Now, I think we are in a diagnostic program. We saw the church announcing that President Ed Kalungu and Mr. Echelon had a meeting somewhere in Osaka, and it was a frank talk. And we have all agreed to this pending dialogue process. Do you think a new chapter has been opened where now these two leaders, including other political parties and people supporting other parties, will sit down and iron out issues that have been, contentious in this country?
For dialogue to exist, there must be this willingness to involve something. You can't go to a meeting with your cup already full. It must be either half or quarter, so there's room to receive. If you go with your cup already full, you are not ready for dialogue. Secondly, there must be humility. There must be give and take. This issue of arrogance, of either power, arrogance of tribe, arrogance of whatever, cannot encourage dialogue. This issue of continuously threatening each other for whatever reasons must not be there. Look, PF was insisting that there must be recognition of Mr. Lungu as president. Without that recognition, there will be no dialogue. Now, sure, in a country where the rule of law, a person petitions you in court but they don't accept your result. You insist that they must recognize you. How? How? When you are sworn in formally, it means the law has been invoked to support your existence. You can't go and start persecuting somebody else now. You must recognize me. For what reason? And that has got no basis at all. And this thing continued as early as, I think, the letters maybe 3 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago. The Minister of Justice, my friend Given Winga, said, no recognition, no dialogue. I said to myself, what's happened to my friend? Dialogue is not about recognition. It's about people of Zambia sitting together and saying, where have we gone wrong? Where can we make amends? Where have we hurt each other? Where have we lost it? Are we still together? Maybe others are reading from the wrong page, they're reading from a different page. We are all one people. Some people want to take to dialogue power, arrogance. You can't come out like that. All of us must be humble enough to accept that it's about Zambia. It's not about us, especially as politicians. There are so many thousands of people in Zambia who don't talk politics, who don't even want to talk politics, but they've got interest in their peace, in their security, in their food security, in their medicines and what have you. Why are we being so selfish? Like you said, because of the benefits that come with politics, you want to clean the air even when you can't perform. Instead of acknowledging that we've tried here, we failed, you want to insist, I'm the one. Yet you're not a performer. In the process, you're not persecuting me, a fellow politician. You are persecuting the innocent children, the old people, the infirm, what have you. We must first of all acknowledge who we are. If we're going to dialogue, we must go with humility, we must go there taking comfort in the fact that we are doing it for the people of Zambia, not for ourselves. Those of us in political formations, we're only servants. There are true oppositions in the people in the streets who are hating. So I would like to encourage my fellow politicians that it's about Zambia, it's about the people of Zambia, it's not about us. And once we can go with that spirit, we'll become selfless and be able to render service to the people of Zambia.
Thank you for coming, Mr. President, to this program this evening.
I'm grateful. Thank you.
This has been the Society, which comes to you every Wednesday on Liberation TV. And the topic was a banning of party regarding state function. And this will People's Party President, Mr. Mike Mboti. For me, Africa Yoma, with the production team, goodbye, God bless you, and see you next week.
They claim that we had 40 signatures. Maybe you remember some of the accusations.
Worship and the body politic should not participate in